Today's latest update is Harry once said Meghan gets whatever she wants, but now that same man is looking at his own life and calling it a mistake, and that shift alone tells you everything about how far things have fallen.
Stop scrolling for a moment. Something major just happened, and it's surprising a lot of people. We've all heard the story of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, their exit from the royal family, the Oprah interview, the Netflix series, and the memoir. It feels like we already know everything. But now, something unexpected has surfaced. The man Meghan was married to before Harry has spoken out. Trevor Engelson, her ex-husband, has reportedly revealed something from Meghan's past that has never been publicly discussed before. According to claims circulating, it involves a child, a story that was never meant to come to light. And when Harry allegedly learned about it, his reaction was deeply emotional. By the end of this, you'll understand why this hit him so hard, what exactly is being claimed, and why this situation is gaining attention. Stay with me, because this story needs to be handled carefully. What just happened? For years, Trevor Engelson stayed completely silent. Through the royal wedding, through Megxit, through global interviews and media storms, he said nothing. But recently, that silence appears to have broken. This wasn't a vague or indirect comment. Reports suggest it was specific, pointing toward a part of Meghan's life that has never been publicly addressed. Now, in the world of royal coverage, leaks and insider claims are common. Anonymous sources talk all the time. But this feels different. Trevor isn't a tabloid figure or a distant insider. He was part of Meghan's life long before the spotlight. And for over a decade, he chose not to speak. So, when someone like him finally says something, even indirectly, it naturally draws attention. At the center of these claims is a child. We'll get into the details shortly, but once that idea began circulating, reactions were immediate. Not just online, but privately as well. According to sources close to the situation, Harry's response was intense and emotional. It's even been claimed that he broke down. And that stands out. This is someone who sat across from Oprah and spoke openly. Someone who publicly addressed his father and brother without hesitation. Yet this situation reportedly affected him on a much deeper level. That tells you something. Who is Trevor Engelson? If you're not familiar with Trevor, his background matters here. Trevor Engelson is a Hollywood film and television producer. He met Meghan around 2004, and their relationship developed over several years. In 2011, they married in a destination wedding in Jamaica. But just 2 years later, in 2013, the marriage ended. Meghan filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. After that, their paths went in completely different directions. By 2015, Meghan was gaining global attention through the TV series Suits. Soon after, her relationship with Prince Harry brought her into the global spotlight. Trevor, on the other hand, stepped away from the attention. He remarried, built a family, and continued his career quietly. What stands out most is his silence. He never sold stories, never gave tell-all interviews, never tried to capitalize on his connection to Meghan. In situations like this, that kind of restraint is rare. Which is why, if he is now choosing to speak, even indirectly, it raises an important question. Why now? People don't usually break a decade-long silence without a strong reason. The allegation involving a child. Now, this part needs to be handled carefully. What's being discussed are allegations, not confirmed facts. According to circulating claims, the situation involves a child connected to Meghan's past, long before she became a public figure. The word being used in these claims is abandoned, which is a serious and sensitive term. But it's important to understand how it's being framed. This isn't being described in a dramatic or villainous way. Instead, the claim suggests that someone was once involved in a child's life and later stepped away without explanation. That's the allegation. Nothing here has been publicly confirmed. Meghan herself has never addressed anything like this. And without verified evidence, these remain claims, not proven truths. So, why are people paying attention? Because of the context. Those discussing this story argue that it doesn't appear randomly. They claim there are timelines, connections, and individuals who were aware of the situation. Whether that's accurate or not is still unclear. But the presence of a narrative, rather than just a single rumor, is what's keeping the conversation alive. Still, it's critical to stay grounded. Extraordinary claims require solid evidence. And right now, that level of proof has not been made public. Harry's reaction and why it matters. What makes this situation feel different isn't just the allegation. It's the reported emotional impact on Harry. To understand that, you have to understand who he is. Harry has always been someone driven by emotion, loyalty, and personal experience. His past, especially losing Princess Diana at a young age, shaped how he responds to family, trust, and relationships. So if he was confronted with something unexpected, something deeply personal, it would naturally hit him harder than most. That doesn't confirm the claim, but it explains the reaction. And that's where this story becomes less about headlines and more about human emotion. Because beyond the rumors, beyond the speculation, what we're really looking at is how private lives, past choices, and public pressure collide in a very intense way. When you hear that Harry cried over this, it's easy to react with doubt. But if you look at the psychology behind it, it actually makes a lot of sense. Harry lost his mother when he was just 12 years old. Diana's death was sudden. And by his own admission in his memoir and interviews, he has spent years struggling to fully process that grief. He has openly spoken about feeling abandoned, not only by his mother's death, but also by the institution, his family, and a system that pushed him to move forward without addressing his emotions. For Harry, abandonment isn't just a word. It's the deepest wound of his life. Then came Meghan. Harry didn't just fall in love with her. He built his entire life around her. He left his country, his royal role, his family connections, and everything familiar, believing she was exactly who she presented herself to be. Now imagine hearing that someone from her past is linking her to a story about abandonment. There's a psychological concept called trauma echoing. It explains how new information can trigger old emotional wounds. It doesn't just hurt in the moment. It reopens past pain. For Harry, whose biggest fear has always been abandonment, hearing something like this about the person he chose above everyone else wouldn't just be upsetting. It would be deeply painful. Now, let's look at the bigger question. Is this an isolated situation or part of a larger pattern? Trevor Ingleson isn't the only person who has felt cut off or distanced by Meghan. He may be the most high-profile voice, but he isn't alone. Her father, Thomas Markle, has repeatedly said he feels completely shut out of her life. Despite his mistakes around the royal wedding, the fact remains, they haven't spoken in years. Her half-siblings have also shared similar experiences of being kept at a distance. Then there's her childhood best friend, Nanaki Pretty. In a 2018 interview, she described Meghan as someone who tends to move on from people when they no longer fit into her life. She said she felt used during their friendship and later cut off when Meghan entered a new phase. To be fair, there are two sides to this. Supporters of Meghan argue that she was setting boundaries and protecting herself from toxic relationships. And that's a valid point. People, especially women, are often criticized for doing exactly that. But what raises questions is the number of similar accounts. One person can be dismissed. Two might be coincidence. But when multiple individuals, an ex-husband, a father, siblings, a close friend, and even former staff, share similar experiences over time, it becomes harder to ignore the pattern. This doesn't prove anything definitively, but it does raise an important question. Now, let's look at how the royal family has responded. Publicly, they've said nothing. No statements from Buckingham Palace. No reaction from Kensington Palace. And honestly, that's expected. The royal family has learned that responding to Harry and Meghan's narratives often fuels the story further. Their strategy has been consistent. Stay silent and let events unfold. Privately, however, sources suggest a more complicated picture. There's reportedly a quiet feeling within the institution that this moment could shift the narrative. Not in a celebratory way, but in a way the palace didn't need to control. For years, Harry and Meghan's image has been built on a clear storyline. They left a cold, rigid institution to live freely and truthfully. That narrative supports their public image, their media deals, and their projects. But if this new story gains traction, if it's verified, if more details emerge, it could challenge that image. And the palace understands that. So, where does that leave us? The truth, as always, is more complex than any headline. But a few things are clear. Trevor Engelson breaking over a decade of silence is significant. The allegations being discussed are serious. And Harry's emotional reaction, coming from someone who has faced intense public pressure, is meaningful. Something important is unfolding here. And the deeper story may not just be about Harry or Meghan. It's about what happens when someone builds a new life and identity, and voices from their past begin to speak. We've seen this happen with celebrities and public figures before. Now we're seeing it happen in real time with two of the most watched people in the world. Because one thing is always true, the past has a way of catching up. So what do you think? Did Trevor have the right to speak out after all this time? Or are some things better left private, no matter what? Let me know your thoughts. I read every comment. And if you want to follow how this story develops, stay tuned because it's far from over.